Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. In this video, I'd like to tell you about another case study that will talk about the sense organs, the etheric senses, and the five evils that plague a living entity who identifies himself or herself with this mind body complex. This is actually an extension of the verse from Ashtavakra Gita, where Ashtavakra has said, true happiness lies in the self and not in the senses. Anyone who is identifying with the sense objects, the senses, and the enjoyment thereof does not know that what tastes like nectar in the beginning may end up as poison in the end. By the time this person knows about nemesis, it is usually too late. I have already told you about two case histories which show that instead of thinking about this mind body complex, one should identify only with the self and attain self realization, deliverance, liberation, and eternal happiness. This case history is as follows. There were two very close friends who worked in a government office. One was A, the other was B. They were in a department which dealt with several legal documents and passing of registration, etc., for property, wealth, etc. These people were in a responsible position in that particular department. Now, this case history talks about illusion and greed. A was a megalomaniac who thought that he was too powerful to be defeated by anybody, whereas B was quite humble and was full of humility. A was not only a megalomaniac, but he was also greedy, avaricious, and unscrupulous. This fellow began accepting bribe from all those whose documents he had to pass for registrations or loans. Soon, this fellow started making money hand over fist, whereas B was a very decent, honest, and nice person who was hardworking and who tried to live within his meager salary. Both A and B had one son each. Those days when A was so successful, his son lived the life of luxury and comfort and studied in a very expensive public school, whereas B's son studied in a government school and both of them came up successfully together, whereas A's son prospered in that public school and got educated well enough. B's son also slogged and came up with flying colors. A always sneered and jeered at B and said, "You are a born fool. This is the time to make money for your family, and you are just showing your honesty, and that is why your son is going to a government school because you cannot pay expensive fees, etc. See, my own son is in a public school." B laughed and shrugged and said that he was happy with his humility. One day, the two sons grew up. Then A and B went separate ways. Years later, years later means are almost after their retirement. One day, B, whose son had come up with flying colors, had given his father a car to go around in the city while he was working abroad in a very responsible and good job. B was going in that car and he had to pass a municipal hospital. There was a huge queue of guys who wanted to either show themselves to the government doctor or to buy medicines. Suddenly, B spotted one person who looked old and haggard but whose face looked quite familiar. B asked the driver to stop the car and then went near that person and found that he was none other than A. A was taken aback and shocked at seeing B's opulence. B had forgotten what A had said before. He respectfully asked A to come and join him in the car. A took hold of B's hands and began weeping inconsolably. B took A to his car and made him comfortable in the car while the car drove to some private clinic. He asked A, "How did you come to this position?" A said, "You had your son in the government office, government school, where that boy passed with flying colors, got a good job, and went abroad. Because you were honest, your child was also honest, and he gave you this car and all the opulences which you are enjoying because they are well deserved. At the same time, my misery is also well deserved. My son studied in a public school. I was a fraud and cheat. I took bribes, and my son also chose my footsteps to follow. He grew up and then he married one girl from the public school who was far more affluent than him. And then this guy unashamedly went after her and went to her family as a household son-in-law. He took away all my money and put me here high and dry. My wife has died and I have no money. I am living on my pension alone and I have to resort to this government hospital to show me and my diseases and illness etc. to the government doctor and get the prescribed medicines from this government hospital because I cannot take expensive medicines. B was very, very unhappy to learn this. He said, "Don't forget that I was your best friend." B took A to a private clinic, had him cured, and then kept him with himself. After some days, A died along with B, and the two sons lost touch with each other forever. A was a megalomaniac whose life came to shambles. He was having a miserable life in the end, though his own friend B rescued him and gave him some comfort. This was because of A's karma. He was an unscrupulous, characterless person who had expected ill-gotten wealth to educate his own son, and the same son betrayed him. Whereas B remained honest and frugal, and he educated his son through a government school. The boy became meritorious, got a good job, went abroad, and from there he gave his father a car and all the opulences that B also deserved but could not enjoy because of his frugal lifestyle in the early days. Now B was very comfortable and luxurious in his lifestyle, whereas A was miserable. This is what Ashtavakra says. Many a times your senses and your evil intentions give you a lot of happiness and pleasure in the beginning, but in the end, when you are helpless and hopeless, Nemesis strikes you and you are brought to your knees. Instead, if you stop identifying yourself with your mind-body complex and begin identifying with yourself and thinking about God in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you will attain true happiness, bliss, and eternal life. You will become self-realized, liberated, and delivered, and you may get a chance to identify yourself as Brahman and to go back to Godhead forever. That is all in this video. Kindly let us learn from all these case studies and lead a pious life for our and our family's good. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.